one tonight since the Gatekeepers podcast is canceled, and my friend Brian from Weird World War II won't be on for another 45 minutes, and that's too short for me because I will be teaching my Wednesday night class. At that time, I have been building some of these Stargrave Scavengers that I featured last week. I've got a couple of them built. Cool thing is that the arms are 100% compatible with the other Stargrave sets without any problems. So I've been using some arms from the crew. Cool thing is that these guys all have trench coats, and so because they have trench coats, they will all match the capes from my sisters and my inquisitorial retinue. So I'm going to paint the capes all maroon to match the sisters. I did have two more built. There are 5 on a sprue, and it looks like I've only got 3 from this sprue built. I know they've got 2 more. Whatevs. These have some pretty cool backpacks. I'm planning on saving the backpacks for more rogue guard. But I want to get at least the first 5 built. I just got to see which since we only have 5 options. I don't want to look like line dancers. I think there was one that's got mostly a closed trench coat. Yeah, closed trench coat. So I've got my good Redgrass Games sprue cutters. I was watching a video from, I think, Pete the Wargamer last week. He uses these. And they're pretty expensive. They're like $40 a pop. And he was actually using them to trim 1mm gold chain. I was like, no. I have some side nippers for electrical wire from Klein that I use for all the finer stuff that's like metal, because that's what they're actually made for. And then I've got a big set of heavy duty old Craftsman nippers, wire cutters that I use for anything heavier metal. Like if I was clipping like the bottom slot for an old base and I want to turn it into pegs, I would cut it with the oops, that was a cup of bases. So I have a whole bunch of 25mm bases from Games Workshop, and a bunch of cheap Chinese knockoff bases too. Normally I would use the really thin bases from that come with the Stargrave box, but I want these to all look like they would fit in more with my sisters, even though they're slightly larger and on 32 mil bases, not 28 mil bases. But so this body, it's got a closed trench coat, and if you compare him to a sister here that's working on, sisters are, they death by snoo, but I think that on the table, and especially if I'm using them for role-playing games, it won't matter as much. Hey, a thumbs up. Well, stick around. Chat a little bit. Let me see if I can add the chat. Yeah, so we're just building some of these. These are the Scavengers from Stargrave, and they are not quite as detailed as Games Workshop minis. They're just not, but they're like $1 a piece, and they actually do paint up pretty easy. They're good hard plastic, and they have very, very few mold lines. So they're really easy. They've got just enough detail on the cloaks, on the folds, to make painting really super cool. So I'm trying to put together, I want 5 out of this box that are all super unique for my, I'm going to put them in with the Inquisitors from the Ashes of Faith. And I was looking at some of the older Inquisitors from some of our Russian friends that still have some of the old Games Workshop minis Still in print. Yeah, that's it. Still in print. Um, you know, because everything old is new again. They're reborn. Yeah, that's it. From our Russian friends. But I don't want to drop the name on this stream because I don't want to get them in trouble. But they do produce some really awesome um, replicas, some black market minis, if you will. Yeah, that's the ticket. Uh, and I was looking at some of the older Inquisitors from the like late '80s, early '90s, and they're kind of hokey, but they would fit right in with this. Um, and then, of course, I think that the sergeant, or not sergeant, the one of the Tempesta Scions, I think, has a cloak. Wouldn't mind adding that guy to this retinue either. So again, it's for fun and it's for role playing, not for tabletop gaming. But I'd like to have an army where they all have these maroon coats and clay capes, cloak and cape. Uh, yeah, that's it. So at 7 o'clock Mountain Daylight Time was Weird World War II's Wednesday night podcast. It's always a great one. I'll make sure that I'm off the air by then to not step on Brian's toes. Um, of all the ways that you could spend your YouTube time, I think his is a lot more valuable than mine. One of these sets had it was one of the War Games Atlantic sets had the pistol from Blade Runner, and I thought, man, that would be 18 different kinds of cool. But this set, one of those Scavengers, this has got a pretty cool looking giant revolver. It's not really holding it. He's holding it at a weird angle. Some of these, they just have them like. I guess I could go out upside down and pretend it's gangland. But yeah, I'm a big fan of big chunky revolvers, big chunky handguns. Most of the Scavenger set had all auto guns. A lot of like modern-ish, um, Kalashnikov clones and whatnot, which is super cool if you're proxying them in as chaos cultists for your 40k, because I think chaos cultists have regular machine guns. They call them stubbers or something like that. Not bolt guns, of course. Bolt guns are the not gyrojet guns that Space Marines and Sisters of Battle use. Still can't figure out why Brits call them casings. I've been around firearms my whole life, and I've never heard of the frame of a firearm referred to as a casing before. So yeah, this arm it's kind of wonk. It's just kind of wonk. But I think I got a knife, a couple of knives, and a club, a trench club. Trench coats and trench clubs. I've got a knuckle duster. Got a knuckle duster from the crew. I don't know, they're like 4 Stargrave boxes, not counting the females. I think there's Mercenaries 2 and Crew 2. And then for the men folk, there's Scavengers, it's the new one. Troopers, Mercenaries, and Crew. I think that's it. I've got all 3 or 6. I haven't built all of them because I mostly use them as needed for characters. And the troopers and crew, I think, especially, would be kind of cool proxies for like Cadians. But again, they don't have laser rifles. They're not. So if your group's like big into WYSIWYG, that obviously would not work. The only ones that had like a laser rifle that really looked like the famous iconic Games Workshop laser rifle was the War Games Atlantic fodder, I want to say. And I did make a bunch of those to be conscripts for for Renegade Guard Army. But I told you I tried to paint those yellow, but that speed paint orange, pardon me, speed paint yellow turned out to be the most obnoxious orange color ever. Really upset me. So they're all orange. That's okay. I mean, chemical suits can certainly be orange. So, what's going on? Not much with the channel. Been trying to grow the channel, but I haven't really had a whole lot of time this last 2 weeks. I really want to give my audience something that they can sink their teeth into. And realizing that for me, this is just something to do while I assemble. So that's, if I get to focus. Not too bad. Big knife. He does have a belt. He's got a belt and suspenders on over his trench coat. So I could give him, I don't know, some grenades, some knives. Try to find a sufficient head. These guys did come with quite a few alien heads, hooded heads, robed heads, masked heads, baseball cap heads. I don't know. I want to put a baseball cap head on a guy wearing a trench coat. There were some mutant-looking heads, like severely wounded. I did use one of those for one of the other guys. I figured I'd paint him up like he's got a plate, big plate in his head. Crafting Gamer, wow. Well, you say hey all, but it's just me and you, Duder. If you want to stick around, cool. I'll open up the chat. I'm gonna do all chat messages are visible there. It's got some like weird grabbing hands, mag pouches, grenades. It's got this cool grenade pouch that's like almost like flares or like long, like grenade shells, like 40mm grenade shells. When I build guys that are carrying grenade launchers, those are cool. I did build like an assault man for my GURPS game because one of the characters templates that I made was an assault man. Here's a bigger one. It's got like some big honking like big mammoth jam, like artillery type. There you go. That's a good view of that. Yeah. Backpacks. I like the backpacks too. Definitely going to save those for my Renegade Guard. Let's see. So he does have a knife. I think there was a knife pouch that did not have a knife in it in one of the other sprues. No, not that one. If you could just see what was going on right now in my room, you would, in the man cave, you would just see tons and tons of open sprues, mostly from the Stargrave from what's that company? Not Osprey. Osprey's the distributor. North Star. I kind of done a review on North Star's website and their offerings last week. Again, they do come. They're shipped from England. Resin 3D printer myself using it. Yeah, that's on my. If you could look behind me over here, I want to put a 3D printer, but I'm in the basement right now, and the ventilation. There is a dryer vent back there. If I could tie the 3D printer ventilation into the dryer vent, because I don't think it's really like at a high volume. I just think it needs to find a way to get the air, and I don't know how much fumes we're talking about. But here's a canteen. Canteens are always cool. I'm holding a knife. This is the sprue from the Fodder 2 from War Games Atlantic. They're the female version of the fodder. I did put some of them together to mix into my. Again, they were supposed to be a conscripts platoon, um, but Games Workshop got rid of rules for conscripts, at least for this edition. So yeah, they're gonna sit on my shelf until such time as I find better use for them. Like I said, I'm not gonna probably be on very long. Maybe another half an hour. Maybe. I'm just trying to make sure that Brian from Weird World War II gets all the attention. This is the sprue from the Mercenaries. It's got some like non-combat stuff. Like there's a guy, an arm holding a ammo can, and there's another arm holding a briefcase. Briefcase and ammo can, and there's an arm holding a data pad too. And those are really cool because when you're doing your sci-fi games, Traveler, GURPS, whatever, you want to have some. If you're playing on a tabletop and you want to have some NPCs, you want to make sure they don't all look like combatants, right? You want to have some guys that look like non-combatants. You got plenty of guys that pull switches and work levers, and the guy that runs the I don't know, the sewer in your sci-fi town. He might not carry a gun, right? I mean, not everybody carries a gun when they're at work. I don't carry a gun at work. Yeah. So, unless you're like the Iosians in Star Trek, where even the little kids carry switchblades. Maybe you want to build some minis. I know, hands. That's what I'm saying. You need like empty hands or hands that are carrying stuff and things. A hand carrying a data pad, and then while the other hand is pointing or waving or something like that. That would be ideal for your sci-fi game. Let's see. I'm gonna try to put on this knife sheath if I can. I need to carve down the. Not all these bits are ideal, right? Oh, I glued it on backwards. Look at me, I'm backwards. No, but sincerely, if you want to if you're doing an RPG, I know some folks don't like RPGs or miniatures with their RPGs. I'm ambivalent. I'm a yes and no kind of guy when it comes to them. I like minis on the tabletop for RPG games so that it keeps the honest man honest. No one can say, I wasn't there when the bomb went off. I was over there. You are exactly where you put your mini, on the board, on the table. And I do understand immersion, and I'm a fan of being immersive. I don't think it's a crutch, though. Maybe it can be a crutch, but there is a link, a very old link between role-playing games and tabletop war games. That is, ever since the beginning, right? That's where Dungeons and Dragons came from, and Dungeons and Dragons is still the 800-pound gorilla. They are still what people think of when they think of role-playing games, right? And I'm not a great fan of D&D, but here's a pouch from a Space Marine. What big cool chest strap. It's like, oh, I missed a message. Elegoo, some 3D printers about half off. That's how I got mine. I could afford to get mine. Elegoo Mars 3, wash and clear station, filters and bottled resin for $331. Yeah, they've been running all the big companies, Elegoo, Frozen, Anycubic. They've all been running some pretty good sales. I get email notifications from most of them. Right now, it's just a matter of finding a place to set it up. I've got room back here in the back of this room where I have my crafting table set up, and I certainly could make it work. It's just inertia, right? It's like if you give a mouse a cookie, if I order this printer, I'm going to have to set it up. And then if I set it up, I'm going to have to use it. So what I really need to do, I think, Crafting Gamer, is number one, stop buying minis, and then work my way through most of my pile of shame. And then when I get through with it, I haven't bought any minis in a while. Aside from this one box of Scavengers, right? um, so yeah, which means I haven't really stopped buying minis at all. But if I can get caught up a little bit, I've still got so many kits that I'm in the middle of. And every time I sit down to actually do some hobbying, something else gets in the way. Life gets in the way. Plus, with my Friday night GURPS game and prepping for the Friday night GURPS game, it sort of leaves my actual time to do stuff like this in the lurch. So let's see. I put some of these almost like gas grenades on him. Focus. I don't know what set they're from. They're probably from a Necromunda set or something. I love bits. I love bits for people, especially. And interesting heads. Same thing with Lego, right? You're putting your Lego minifigs together. You want them all to look a little bit different. So what you need to do now is find a head that fits the dealio. I prefer a head without a helmet, and I think I prefer either a dude head or more of an androgynous head. Got these War Games Atlantic heads, but those heads are... I don't really want to futz with green stuff right now, so if I used a Games Workshop head, I could cut the socket off, because most of them have sockets. I might be able to find an interesting head in a Necromunda boxes, but I don't feel like digging through Necromunda boxes either. I just want a simple head. A lot of the Stargrave heads, all because they're made for playing Stargrave. A lot of them have cyborg eyes and whatnot. All of my epoxy resin dried up. The resin half, not the hardener half. And I don't know what it uses as a medium to base it, but it's not water. I tried to use water to reconstitute it, and that just flat out did not work. So I'm going to need new resin so I can base the metal minis. I typically base and build my metal minis with resin instead of glue. Use some epoxy to hold the heads. Pardon me, to hold the feet to the base, right? I'm not finding any heads that I like. I've got those mutants from Spiral Arm, but they're, I don't know. They look like the bad guy from the old Excalibur movie, kind of. The guy with the golden helmet. FDM 3D printer. Yeah. The cool thing about having 3D printing versus buying plastics is that a pile of shame in STLs is a lot smaller than a pile of shame in plastic. And so it's easier to just print the stuff you want and then just not print the stuff you don't want. The thing I like about plastic is it's just so easy to kit bash. It is so easy to just, because the way the plastic glue works, right? Plastic glue sort of melts everything together. And then that's it. They're melted together. And then you can always just clip off the pieces that you don't like. Just remember my old motto, right? Measure once, cut twice. Or I cut and it's still too short. There's a kind of a screaming head. Okay, let's try this screaming head. I have seen that a lot of the other creators producers. Yeah, it's a better word for it. Producers have really stepped up their game. I know that Victoria Miniatures is releasing a lot of her stuff on as STLs. And then I've also been impressed with the increase in quality from the non Games Workshop plastic producers, at least for minis. Uh, both Stargrave, Frostgrave, and Wargames Atlantic have really picked up their production value in terms of kit detail. I would say that they are not up to a Games Workshop standard of detail. I do think you can get a Games Workshop standard of detail 3D printing, especially these new high resolution printers. I've seen some of the high resolution prints, the 8K and 12K ultra prints, and they are amazing. But even the 4K stuff is better than most people can paint. Right? It comes down to polygon size, and some of the polygons. On things that are perfectly round, especially if they're round, then it's easier to see the polygons through it, especially since 3D printers actually tend to print in a rectangular pixel, not a true square pixel. So you tend to see that a lot more. Justin, hey, welcome. So I just decided to come on for a little while because there's no Gatekeeper show tonight, I guess. Otherwise, I'd be watching that show until 7 o'clock, maybe or later. That or Brian from Weird World War II does an amazing show. He is a fun guy, and he is definitely worthy of my attention. So I was just assembling some of the minis that I unboxed last week. I'm doing some of the Stargrave. Here's one I put together. Looks pretty cool. Unfortunately, I said you only get 5 bodies per sprue, so I'm having a really hard time since the legs and the torsos are already together. I just want to turn this guy's head so he's more looking down his gun barrel, right? There's no point in pointing the gun in one direction and then not looking down the sides. I mean, nobody ever does this. Star Wars together. 3D printer slicers. Yeah, that's one thing I'm really hoping that part of the hobby becomes a lot easier. I've seen too many videos of failed prints when people try to slice STLs and then add supports inappropriately. And if the supports aren't right, then the print comes out like a saggy goo ball. And I think that the pre-supported stuff is great. I've seen a lot of stuff. A lot of the subscribers channels on Patreons and such have been offering a lot of really good stuff, and that's probably what I would do. I'd probably get on a Patreon or just buy some STLs and get to work, especially for vehicles and terrain. I've seen some really nice 3D printed terrain and some really nice 3D printed vehicles from guys like Gamsa and like Eons of Battle's got a Patreon. I haven't printed any of it. I've only seen pictures of it. And anyway, my point is that if you do it, if you get into it, then you can just leave your pile of shame on your desktop or laptop and not have it in your face all the time. So I do have this one Frostgrave sprue. I think that one of the new expansions for Stargrave called for some barbarians. And I did cut one of the heads off already to use on my use with these guys. Guy had kind of a short beard. And I was looking at the Frostgrave cultists, and they all have a hole in the back of their head that I'm going to have to fill in with some either green stuff or Tamiya putty. and then sand it smooth so I could use those heads. It's a really cool sprue, but I hate it when they. That's the one inconsistency I've seen is that the heads, those heads, don't have a ball and socket. They sort of stick to the back, and I don't like it. But I'm still going to use them for sure. If I can find that sprue. I have too many half cut through sprues right here on my feet. Anyway, so I think I'm going to put together 2 more of these Scavengers, and hopefully tomorrow I can have them fire up the airbrush. They're not hard to modify. What's hard to modify? Your 3D prints or the Stargrave cultists? Probably neither one are hard to modify. If you're good with slicing, I mean, I'm getting kind of long on the tooth for computer stuff at my age, but I do have a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old son that can do that stuff for me. I do recall a time when I would futz around with computers and just figure it out myself, but I just got a new laptop and it's a Windows machine, and I was surprised at how little I really understood what was going on in there. I think there was a time when like I said, when I understood everything a lot better than I do now. But yeah, I could probably futz with it and figure it out. I'm looking for the Frostgrave cultist sprue that I had, and I think that's it. Okay, so no, it wasn't the Frostgrave. It wasn't the cultists. It was the monsters that had. They were like beastmen. Yeah. So the Frostgrave, let me see these Frostgrave cultists. They're okay. They put them under a magnifying lens. They've got like undead arms, skeleton arms. All their gloves have really big cuffs that would make them not so good to use directly with the Stargrave set. I'd have to cut the cuffs off. Yes, I could definitely do that. This one's got a couple of hands though that are holding like Chris knives and chains. Not as good at bits as I'm used to though. Lots of hoods, pointy hoods, weird masks. They're definitely going to get used. They're just not going to get used. They're just not going to get used today. They're going to get used down the road when I've got a wild hair that's not this. This is it. So let's find out exactly what this Stargrave stuff, or pardon me, Frostgrave stuff always says what it is right on the sprue. Osprey Publishing, North Star Military, Made in England, Knowles. Okay, so that was what when I opened up last week were Knowles. I didn't have my magnifying lens in I'm at that point in my life where my bifocals aren't bifocally enough anymore. So the Knowles have really good, cool Beastmen heads, but they're going to take some pretty serious modifications to add on to your regular human bodies. One, they've got the hole is in the back. So first thing you have to do is fill that in with some putty or green stuff, and then after that, depending on what you're putting it on, have to add a little bit more to the bottom to get it to sit on the body proper. I definitely want to. I'm feeling these guys. They feel like guard loyalists to me, like loyalist beastmen. But I've got 5 bodies and I've got 10 heads, which means I have got heads that I can use again. A little more beasty than the Frostgrave demons, which I also liked a lot. I did end up saving a bunch of those heads. Oh, everybody's gone. Well, I'm still going to work here for a little while. I didn't expect folks to stick around forever and listen to a one-sided rant. I just need to keep my production value up. Keep my production up. Wait, Justin, you're still here? Oh, Knowles, love those cultists and Knowles. Yeah. Well, okay. I can't trust that thing. I've learned I can't trust that thing. I'm just trying to find a head. I think, like I said, I want to put together. This guy's got kind of a mustache. That's a girl. I don't mind putting girls even on power armor bodies if the power armor is big and bulky. I think I did a couple of those. I'm not trusting that counter at all. I can't trust it. Anyway, so I want to have. So I started. I know I didn't show this off. I've been still working on more capes and cloaks, and just trying to really push contrast. I'm gonna put a little more light on this. There, so I can get rid of that thing. So, trying to do some more edge highlighting on that. This is a Games Workshop. This is a cast. Or this is a resin Inquisitor, and just been really trying to paint cloth well and find the time to paint cloth well. That's really where I'm going right now. I really like the sisters aesthetic, except for the body horror part, right? So Arcoflagellants, Penitent Engines, and Servitors. Servitors are kind of gross. There was one Servitor in the Ashes of Faith, but aside from the claw hand, he almost looks like Bane. With and I put a Melta on him because I want to put on my sisters, and Meltas are cool as hell. I can always. He needs a bit. He's not quite ready for paint yet. I didn't like the way the priming turned out, so I'm just gonna spritz another black and gray coat on him in the morning. And then because he's like the size of a Space Marine, for crying out loud. I think I've got maybe a Space Marine on the table. I don't really have a lot of Space Marines. No. I do have this big duder from Warcry. There's the Frostgrave. Yeah, I have the Frostgrave Demons box. I put together a bunch of them. I did do some conversions with the arms. I cut off some of the hands and gave them laser guns. I might have given one like a chainsword. I don't know if I have those in here or if they're out in the other room. I've got a bunch of minis waiting to be painted. I think they're primed, but they're just out by my PC. Brian, no, Brian. I said that at 7:00 we're gonna sign off, and all the cool kids were gonna watch you. I only even signed on because Gatekeepers was not doing a show tonight, and you're not starting your stream until 1900 Mountain Daylight Time. And I promised I wouldn't step on your toes. We're just going over some of my painting for the week, some of the crap on my table, and I was just showing how I'm trying to get some contrast on some cloth for my Inquisitors. And I'm trying to figure out how an Inquisitor army would look in Warhammer 40k. And so to that end, I've got these Stargrave Scavengers that all have coats. So I'm going to paint their coats all maroon to match the maroon cloaks on the sisters. And then I think I've got a full squad of Tempestus Scions that I got from the Ashes of Faith box. And I'll probably paint them out maroon too. Yeah, and there's the Tempestus. I got the Tempestus Prime, I think. And so I'll definitely paint him up maroon. Yeah, because he's got that cloak that falls over his shoulders. I'm gonna have to look that up. Cool Kids by the Eco Smiths. It sounds poppy. Is it poppy? It sounds super poppy. Um, Not a big fan of the hoses on the guns, but we'll make it work. Although I really do like the daggers in this box. I've got a bunch of those that I use for other things. In fact, the daggers, I actually made the daggers a plot device in my GURPS game. I was looking at these daggers and I thought, where would those come from? And then I had decided that in the game, all of the characters have to make their own knife, like the old World War II style, the field knives, no, campaign knives. Brian, what were those things called? Where all the guys would, when they go into the field, they'd make their own knife. I know there's a term for it, and I know it's not field knife or tech knife, but something like that. There's like a whole history to it. You look it up online. See all those guys that made their own knives. Anyway, so I'm gonna get off because it's time for Brian from Weird World War II's show, and you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, guys. I promise to put up a real video this week. My work schedule has been absolutely killer, and I have just not been super happy with the way things are going. So I bid you peace, and hope to see you all next week. Thanks. Bye.